Anglo American Platinum accounts for about 40% of the world's newly mined platinum.
Right, and we know where their operations are. They've been shifting more towards the open-cast Mogalakwena asset. 80% still owned by Anglo American Group, so that's interesting. What are we talking here with regard to market cap?
Market cap, we are sitting with about 76.5 billion rand, price to earnings ratio of 94.2, currently paying no dividend. Gary, let's get your stance on Amplats.
I think, yeah, the real exciting thing about Amplats, what Paul mentioned, I mean, Mogalakwena, that asset, I mean, is really the only exciting thing that I can find. I mean, a mine-built union, these mines, you know, are very difficult to operate. Like Paul mentioned again in the head of the show as well, you know, huge labor, you know, unrest here as well. I mean, if you look at the percentage of Amplats that's unionized, that's 94% unionized. So, you know, you're still going to have sort of labor issues here. For me, difficult to find reasons to buy other than perhaps the mechanization project.
Paul, Gary mentions labour. We are about to go into negotiations for wage negotiations, and that's always a precarious time for miners in general.
Now, unfortunately, the model of labour utilisation has remained the same for over 100 years, which is largely work gangs going underground into very hot and cramped workspaces using pneumatic drills to advance the stope faces. And they've had marginal productivity improvements, but not much, okay? Combine that with a highly militant workforce, either under AMCU or NUM. You will have noticed perhaps over the weekend that NUM has changed its national leadership. Frans Belleni, who was seen as a more reasonable person and fun to negotiate with, has been replaced potentially by someone and people who are less compliant. But I suppose NUM and AMCU are fighting a rearguard action because the industry is in trouble, jobs are being shed, and that's where unionism becomes much more fierce. So I'm afraid on that outlook, not positive at all. Job shedding as well as highly militant and lost hours due to wage-related and other strike action.
Gary, I also want to just put the industry into context globally, because South Africa produces 80% of the world's platinum. So we are platinum globally.
No, for sure. We are platinum, and yet the way that we're managing it seems crazy. I mean, you know, okay, if you look at something like the OPEC cartel at the moment, it is breaking down. I mean, that price fixing that you could potentially do, you know, it's not always as easy. But I mean, if you look at it, what's happening at our platinum mines, I mean, it would be lovely if we could just curtail production, but politically that's almost impossible because of, you know, once you shut down a mine shaft, I mean, you're going to have job cuts, and it's also very expensive to shut down a shaft. So, you know, what tends to happen instead in the real world is that these shafts end up, you know, even though they're unprofitable, I mean, the company ends up running them far longer than they should, you know, because they don't want to have to deal with, you know, strike action. They don't want to have to lay off employees, and they don't. And if the platinum market does turn, say, in the next 5 years, they don't want to have to then get that shaft working. So, yeah, difficult situation.
Let's have a look at the share price chart, because that will tell a story. You'll see that it's at the tail end of a nasty slide over the last 4 years. So that, I think, continues, though, to reflect the reality, and that is that people are worried about profitability levels, they're worried about this runoff, and they're worried about the platinum price, because it ought to have rebounded. Your theory about the platinum price, the price maker, the auto industry has recovered. It should be higher, but it kind of isn't, which is a worry.
At the end of the day, we spoke about value managers at the top of our discussion. Are value managers piling into platinum?
I'm not sure. I mean, there's a little bit of talk, but I think most people are depressed in that camp because they've talked about now's the time to get in, and then their stocks have slid another 30%, and then they talk, well, and you know, there's nothing worse in the markets than calling something cheap and then watching it get cheaper.
Hot or not, Gary?
Yeah, can't be hot for me. No.
Hot or not, Paul?
Nope, not hot for me.